Hello there, it's Tim from Digital Signage Explored. Welcome. Today I am really excited to introduce to you Neb, co-founder at Plainly. Neb, thank you very much for joining.
Hey, Tim. Thank you for having me.
So we brought you on board because we've actually just recently done a bit of work between Plainly and SignLive, and we wanted to talk about content generation at scale. Could you give a really quick elevator pitch of Plainly and what it does?
Yeah, of course. Planning is a product that helps creative teams automatically create After Effects based videos using data. And that means that they can increase the creative output while keeping the quality bar high.
And how long has Plainly been in business for?
So we've been around for 4 years, give or
Mhm.
take.
Okay. And what was just out of interest, what was the kind of inception? Was there a particular Was there something that spawned you to create Plainly? Do you see a problem in the industry that you wanted to address?
Yeah, so actually my background is in motion design. So before Plainly, I was creating all of these videos manually.
Mm,
And I just thought, there has to be a better way than pouring hours and hours in After Effects and just doing the mind-numbing tasks of
hmm
changing some simple things rather than doing the creative work, which is okay, let's create the videos, let's be creative. Unfortunately, there are a lot of use cases where you just need to change some couple of things, personalize this, personalize that. And that's where I thought, okay, there has to be a solution for this. And that's Plan.
Excellent. I think that makes a huge amount of sense. And coming from a marketing background, we've suffered the same fate where someone says, we need this, but we need 20 different versions. And then it's just a rendering
Yeah,
process. And it's just a huge
it
amount of
is.
time just to sit there. So one of the things is obviously the challenge that you're kind of questioning here is how do we make content at scale? What is the struggle that you typically hear? What's the pain point? Is it we don't want to have that many staff just working on render farms? We just don't have the time to create the content. What was the general question you're trying to answer?
So it's two things. First one is it is a huge waste of time. You have this creative powerhouse
Mm,
because video editors, motion designers, art directors, they're all creative people who can channel their energy so much better than doing this rendering process, as you mentioned.
mm,
And then the second thing is just there are so many projects that require a huge scale of content. They need a ton of content that's personalized, that's unique in some shape or form,
hmm
and they can't be done unless you utilize software and automation. And that's the problem we solve. That's the need we address.
That makes a lot of sense. And I know we've talked about it briefly, but there's obviously the challenges of content now being a lot more localized in its
Mhm.
requirement, and there are a lot more hyper targeted individuals. Content is less effective and sticky now if it's more of a general brand campaign rather than a localized, personalized message. Would you agree? Is that kind of what you're being asked?
Yes, exactly. I mean, if you're creating like a Super Bowl ad, which is one and done, it's like this huge campaign that's done once per year,
Mm,
then you're not going to find value in Plainly. But if you're doing this sort of everyday content that could be localized and personalized,
mm.
then that would increase its effectiveness. So that's where clients seek us out, and that's where we help them with personalization.
And that's obviously something that's pretty broad in terms of market vertical. One of the ones that I know we've talked about is QSR menus and pricing
Mhm.
and product availability. One of the things that Plainly can do is obviously instead of just amending text, it can also be image files as well, right? So you could, in essence, create 700 different menu boards from an Excel file.
Yes, exactly. It can change images, it can change videos, audio, colors, text. The output can look really unique, although it's fully automated.
hmm
So that's a cool feature.
So I think, and then I think obviously we're talking about, so you've got the images and video. So could you, in essence, just change the background design as well as an asset file?
Yeah, of course.
So you could, in essence, although the content itself will be located on the screen in a similar place, you could end up with two entirely different pieces of content just based on the instructions that you give it.
Yes, exactly. Like you could end up with totally different content. Like imagine changing the background, the color. The digital signage doesn't have music, I think, right?
It can do on occasion. Is if it was a video file, it could do.
Yeah, well, more that's one benefit of video.
hmm
Um, but yeah, you could change a lot of things and make the video unique.
Mm. So one of the things that we talked about is a case study that you had from a retail estate agent. Could you dive into that one and what their requirements is so we could get a good example of where this works in a real world example?
Yes, of course. So the case study with Anywhere, which is one of the largest real estate companies in the US, is a very good demo of personalization at scale.
Mm,
So because they're a big company and they're a franchisee, they have to control the brand and ensure compliancy. Okay,
mm-hmm,
so their creative team created a master version of a TV ad, but in order to increase the efficiency of that TV ad, they personalized each ad to affiliates. So basically, each affiliate got their own version of that master TV ad that looks amazing, that's compliant with the brand standards,
mm-hmm,
and that's personalized. So, it's just being generic doesn't work in that instance when you're
mm,
talking to a local community. If you're selling the home in a certain district, in a certain part of town, just being generic doesn't work. So in this instance, it was just a personalization of text, but you can think of personalizing even more, like adding images of a certain part of the town and images of a certain town even, and really connecting the video to the buyer on a
yeah.
whole other level, not
Mm-hmm.
just, oh, here is a random generic ad.
That's really interesting because I think ads are obviously becoming more targeted, have
Mhm.
been for a long time. That's not necessarily new as a concept, but it's the delivery of that asset and how it's done, because often that's done via HTML5 content or anything, which does have its benefits, but then there's also downsides to that as well. And it's finding where we marry that into digital signage. So, in terms of industries, and we'll come back to that point in a minute, but in terms of industries, are there any other particular industries you feel like this affects? Is it dealerships, or where is the problem most often getting resolved?
Yes. So some other industries, if you think about franchisees, car dealerships, of
Hmm.
course, real estate, internal car. If you think about it from like the core, wherever you have lots of inventory moving around, lots of
Mm,
people coming in and out, you can imagine like a car dealership. You have a lot of people. First of all, there are a lot of dealerships.
right.
There are a lot of cars. There are
Hmm.
a lot of customers. So it's just a lot of moving parts. It's a very dynamic industry, and
Hmm.
that's where the content need is very high,
Yeah.
and where just being generic doesn't work. You have to personalize, and just by doing this manually, it's not gonna you're not gonna satisfy the needs of that market, that industry.
Yeah, and you can imagine there's a lot of complexity, especially in dealerships, because not only have you got, let's say, if you're not a specific dealership, if you're more of a generic dealership that manages two or three different brands, you might end up having 5 car releases a year, which need new content, new collateral that you want to customize and tailor to your location. Maybe there's pricing values. The other one that I know has been discussed as well is franchises. I had a bit of a franchise background where I worked before, and there's a very fine balance in franchising where the franchisor wants to be able to give the franchisee a certain level of control, but yeah, and
Yes.
customization, but not full access from a brand perspective. So they could really
Mhm.
align with that too.
That's one of the use cases we see a lot, actually, franchisees building their own internal video creation tools. So the big company, like the brand theme of the big company can actually control the brand narrative and
Yeah.
guidelines. But then also they want to give their franchisors a way to create their own marketing videos. So
Hmm.
they can give them a bit of flexibility. Okay, what headline do you want to put here? What end card do you want to put here? So you can make your own video within
Mm.
restrictions of the brand. And you can think how much that expands the creative output of that franchisee. Like you
And
actually
the
get like a huge video team.
Yeah, and the value add of that is that the franchisor or the head office can say, "Look, we've invested $30,000 in this marketing campaign with these videos, this video collateral that we've set up. Now all I need you to do is go and fill in 3 fields on this file to be like, okay, I want to have Tim Baker on the bottom of it, and I want to have the lower third to say my name, and I want this and this and this and this contact information, region, location specific information. It's all possible, and then can just be uploaded automatically."
Exactly. Exactly.
So one of the things I did want to address was the HTML5 thing, and if you don't mind, Neb, I'll go into a bit of detail on what the differences there are. But we've seen this exist in digital signage before, and traditionally, the way that it's been done is through HTML5, which has massive benefits because you can say, "Look, I'm going to create this HTML5 piece of content collateral. I'm going to have that with this field of data that can upload and get amended," which is fantastic. There are a few downsides to it. One of which is content guaranteeing the content's going to look the same everywhere it goes. The hardware for digital signage is very flexible in terms of you might have something which is incredibly low power. It's really just maximally designed to display two different zones of content and they're static images or maybe videos. You can always rely that it's going to do that. But with HTML5, there's so many variables in terms of how much animation do you have in, how intensive is it to load all of that content. So often, especially with these, when we're talking about scale, often someone with 600 or 700 players, they're dealing with a little bit of older hardware versus the newer hardware. There's always a transitional point where they've got some historic devices sitting there, and you can never guarantee that's going to deliver the content at the same level. Whereas with the plainly element, you're basically exporting an MP4 file, right? That's the end product.
Yep.
So, every single piece of digital signage hardware that should be working should be able to run an MP4 file. So you've got a little bit more unity and a unified experience on the content that's being delivered. One of the other benefits in the SignLive and plainly integration is you can also use the tagging functionality, right, in that Excel file or whatever file you might be using.
Yeah, I mean, with SignLive, we really closed the whole loop. It's an awesome display of automation within digital signage content, because you can drive hundreds of pieces of content from one Excel file directly to the screens and have the tagging ability to decide which screens go where, which content goes on which screens. But it's really a full 360 demonstration of automation where like the scale it can achieve is really amazing. And the time savings, I mean, they're just, they're very obvious.
So I spoke to, a couple of years ago, I was at a show and I spoke to someone I think manages 40 creative individuals, basically just doing this one thing. And the overhead cost of having 40 individuals to do something that this can in essence replace is pretty crazy.
It's not just replace. I come from the video background, so I'm a bit, touchy on the subject of replacing people,
right?
Especially when they're video editors. But these people can spend their time on so much more. Don't imagine all of the campaigns they can create, all the clients, that they can serve many more clients. It's just a waste of time. I'm changing elements.
I'm really glad you mentioned that because I was going to raise it, because I think there is a fear of change with this kind of thing, and it's almost like what are we going to do with all of these employees that are set just to create content? It's like, well, you have now a content creator's calendar, and we have an in-house or internal content creator here, Nat, who's fantastic, is always inundated with work. So the last thing that they want to be doing is just doing the same thing and it's watching your computer render, because a lot of the time it takes up all of your compute power and your computer becomes useless whilst you're rendering out a 5-minute video. You just have to wait and look at the loading bar. So it's time saving. Your team can do way more, way faster.
It opens up new revenue possibilities, honestly. You can take on more clients, you can do more campaigns, and just let the robots do the things that are, time intensive and
exactly that. Exactly. So I just wanted to interject one more piece from a digital signage perspective, because I've spoken to many customers, and some of which are running, one as an example, I can't say their name due to NDA, but has 600 locations, and in each location they have 600 individual teams, and each of those teams are responsible for their content to regionalize and to localize them, which obviously when you're looking at one singular location, there might be 2 people looking after that location, like a head office or an office scenario, and they're responsible for the content. They could, and this is probably a conversation we should have with them at some point, is to say, well, actually, is there some value in saying, hey, local teams, you can still do bits and pieces that you want that's totally unique, but if there's a message that we want to send out to the entire company at large, but it needs to be specific to that business location, actually, this makes way more financial sense to manage rather than do this by the 600 people that are looking after it today.
Yeah. And one thing that I always question is companies spend so much money on digital signage on all of the systems, and content comes last. And that's actually the thing that's displayed. You can have the best systems, but the only thing that the customer sees is the content. And it always puzzled me, why is this? Why is all of this budget spent upfront in the things that the customer doesn't see? But when it comes to content, they're just satisfied with a old PowerPoint presentation.
I think, creativity is one of the things that if you don't know it, you don't plan for it. And that's a real missing gap. I think it's getting better. In the past, it probably started back in the early thousands when you had products like Apple come out and they were 100% brand focused, and you see them take over the market, and Nike and things like that, where they go, "Oh, actually, even if we're a corporate comms, or even if we're hardware or software, something that isn't, let's say, a supercar, there's value in having that brand alignment, and our content really reflects who we are as a business, regardless of what business that is."
Yep.
So kind of value at the end of the day, in a synopsis and wrap up, it's about delivering mass content at scale. And digital signage is not obviously the only piece of this. Is kind of a new avenue for you guys, but I don't think the core message changes. It's just by not by chance, but by research, you understand that there's a gap in the digital signage market where HTML5 can fill sometimes, but often you want a little bit more security on what you're delivering to those screens are a similar product. And candidly, you're more likely to have someone internally who can work with Adobe than someone who is a HTML5 editor in a lot of different industries.
Yes. The big benefit of Plane is that it doesn't change the creative process. It just empowers it. So a lot of the editors, motion designers, creative people, they're working in the Adobe suite. So this is just an extension of their workflow. And the value is always going to be the same for us. Give our customers the best content, the most relevant content at all times in digital signage space at all screens.
Yeah.
So that's the value. It stays the same always.
I think that makes a huge amount of sense. And with the Signage Live edition, we don't often actually talk on the show about Signage Live. It's not really intended for that. But the key item is the fact that tagging ability, you can be sitting at a desktop and say, and I think that was we watched a demonstration of Plainly probably about 4 or 5 months ago now. And we weren't at the point where that was enabled at the time. And it was the first question that I think came from everybody's mouth in Signage Live was, can we get tagging involved with this? Because it was very clearly the last little piece of that puzzle to bring the whole story together as a narrative.
Yep. And it works beautifully. I mean, the integration and the partnership is amazing.
Perfect. Well, Neb, I really appreciate your time. Where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find our website. Just go to plainlyvideos.com and you'll have all of the links there.
Excellent. And if you do want to go and visit our sister channel here with Signage Live Explored, you can actually watch an in-depth video where Joe takes you through the entire Plainly configuration and then what the end product is on there. Neb, thank you very much for jumping on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think this was awesome.